Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. Look, Cape vultures, this is a bird that hasn't been left out when it comes to research. I mean, there's a myriad of papers, and there's a lot of people that have done a lot of work on these birds in the past. So it's not a species that there's much more left for us to sort of understand about them. I mean, there is a lot of questions still around them. But certainly in the northern Drakensberg northern Drakensberg area, where I operated as a conservation manager for a number of years, there were some added threats that we sort of started looking at. Everybody knows the general threats to these birds include, the power line issues and obviously poisoning of carcasses and the availability of food, etc., etc. But there was some other stuff that were starting to rear its ugly head on the horizon. So while still working at Manxkal and just obviously doing the monitoring of these birds, it started occurring to me that perhaps one should have a look and see in the northern Maloti area, which incorporates the protected areas of Royal Natal, Cathedral Peak and Manxkal, sort of right down to Injisuti. Where do these birds actually move, and how does that relate to all of the threats, but also specific threats? Right, so we all know the background. I'm not going to get into any of this stuff. Everybody knows that these birds are endemic to us. They classified as vulnerable. Range and numbers are decreasing, although they've been the focal point of such a lot of research. There's a Cape Vulture Biodiversity Management Plan and a monitoring protocol. And of course, why do we worry so much about these birds? Because we have to, not only from that point of view, but also that it's laid down in legislation, or it's laid down in its management plan that we need to look after these birds, and we need to make sure that we know what's going on and where they're breeding, how they're moving around, what they're using as food sources, etc. Right. So basically, I just want to get into that bottom bullet down there, the monitoring bullet. That was really what I was doing. I mean, I'm a nuts and bolts guy. I'm not a scientist. I'm a field man, and that's what we were doing at Manxkal, mostly regarding these birds. Is obviously looking at site visits, and specifically looking at one colony, which is the Vultures Retreat colony, which is in the high berg between Cathedral Peak and Manxkal. It's one of the largest Cape vulture breeding colonies in the Drakensberg, with a huge number of birds there. So we were very intensively monitoring this, obviously looking at nest building success, egg laying success, fledgling success, movement patterns. All right, so the movement patterns was the second part then. After we had been doing this, I sort of approached the likes of Sonia and those guys and said to them, perhaps what you should do is look at some tracking devices and on birds, try to catch a couple birds, put some tracking devices on, see where they fly. And then of course we also do, as a third part of the whole effort, and in the northern Drakensberg, or in the entire Drakensberg, we do counts, and I put those in inverted commas, because it's very often just a case of going up to a place. Just to show you, there's the Vultures Retreat colony, is in that little gap over there. Here's the Drakensberg Mountains stretching around this way. But those counts basically take us to places that look like that. That's Cathkin Peak and Staghorn and the Manxkal. We don't necessarily go to the top there, but to places that are pretty similar to that. Take a couple of things that we can look through, and then monitor these colonies and see how many birds we can see. But as you can see, it's not it's not somewhere where you can drive to with a car. You can walk there, but it'll take you about 10 or 7 hours or so. So it's not an easy place to do any of this kind of stuff in. If you don't have aerial support and that kind of thing, it becomes quite a mission. If you want to go up and come down, it'll take you a number of days. So it's not an easy place to operate in and work in. These birds do choose, areas that are almost inhospitable. As you know, they're all colonial cliff nesters, and they like these sheer cliffs. That's your accommodation normally on these kinds of operations, in that hole over there. And that's what it looks like inside. I must just add that is coffee. This is what it looks, where we normally sit and do these counts. Just to give you an idea, this is the edge of the Drakensberg. So down there is about 1,000-meter drop, about 2 meters behind me. So it's not an easy place. Now this is what they look like. That's Vultures Retreat colony, or the main face. There's basically 3 faces on Vultures Retreat. This is the main face. All those little white dots over there are all nesting sites. So we look at those nesting sites, we try to identify them, Sonja Kruger has helped us quite immensely in the past, to produce big photographs with identified nest sites and etc., etc. And that's really what we're looking for. Are these guys sitting in the holes on a nest with the possibility of an egg underneath them? So that's really what we're going for. I then decided I was going to try to take this a little bit further, which might prove in the future not to be a great decision, but to try to see if I can do some kind of research as a field man and into these kinds of things and see where they fly. And basically doing that by putting a couple of these transmitters on the birds to try to just work out sort of areas in which they use, habitat use and forage range, etc., etc. So basically it comes down to just wanting to find out a little bit more about where they fly in the northern Maloti-Drakensberg in order to help the managers, of which I was part, to make proper decisions regarding how, what do we do, how do we monitor these threats, what do we do when there's developments coming in that part of the world, how do we counter that stuff. Right, so I'm not going to get into the detail of all the research questions, but it basically looks at the foraging range of Cape vultures in the northern Drakensberg. How do they use the land, the commercial land, the communal land, both mature and immature vultures, because of course we know they have different flight patterns or flight distances, and that was an important thing that we're trying to achieve, is the height above ground that they would fly, when recorded, because this will then directly tie into another threat that obviously is now coming throughout South Africa, which is the threat of wind farms and wind turbines. A lot of these wind turbines are more than 100 meters high. They travel at 200 and some odd kilometers at the end of the blades, and when a bird flies into that kind of thing, it's tickets, unfortunately. So, as we all know, that there's planned developments for these wind farms and wind turbines, especially in the northeastern part of Lesotho. And whether these birds from the the vultures retreat colony will actually make use of that area. So, just to conceptualize it again, there's the Cathedral Peak State Forest of the Drakensberg Park. Sort of in that block over there is where the developments are planned to be taking place. This is all just very basic stuff. Everybody knows walking traps. We use those. We would feed inside them. We would close the gate. Whatever birds are inside, you'll use, to do whatever it is that you want to do with them. Then you just got the access gates, you got the sliding gates, and we also looked at using a gas-operated net gun. Those are not easy to operate, and they're not easy to find, and they're not actually easy to get, all of the barrels to shoot at the same time, etc. It's quite a nightmare. So we will be going into another sort of method, which is just a normal noose method that I use for bearded vulture. We'll try to implement that. It has not been easy to actually catch individuals. You'll see now there's only, I needed about 10 individuals fitted with these things. I've only got about 3 flying around at the moment. We had 4. One unfortunately passed away, but there's at least another 3 of them flying. So I need another at least 7 birds to do. And, with the cage traps and stuff, we have not been that successful of capturing. Of course, all the captured individuals will be given that normal treatment as is done for all these birds, whether it's saffron tags and measurements, etc., etc. The devices, everybody knows what they look like. Solar panels that generate the power, a little aerial, and then there's a little harness there. They can either fit on the base of the back here, or fit like a backpack between the wings. It all depends on which is the best method. There's 2 schools of thought around that. Fitting the tags, basically, it's a process that takes a number of people to do. Takes probably about 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so. We fit the transmitters and then they get going. So, and then the types of transmitters has also been quite a thing for us to try to get our minds around. You get this normal cell phone, those telemetry kind of devices that work with cell phone towers and the cell phone network. And then you get those really expensive, nice, big satellite types of units. I'm not going to get through all of this stuff there, but the basic stuff around it is the cell phone ones are cheaper, but they need cell phone towers, obviously, to download information. So the birds will get into cell phone towers at some point in time and download all the stored data. But especially in places like Lesotho and around on the back of the mountains, etc., it becomes dicey if those birds spend a lot of time there. The satellite ones, of course, is a lot more. You get your fixes all the time, but they have a higher cost. You've got you've got higher costs when it comes to data download, and that kind of thing. So, and they store data on websites. They're very reliable units as well. And then the altitude fixes are important as well. The battery life is another thing that's a practical consideration when it comes to these machines. You know, we're sort of heading towards a 12 to 18 month battery life, but it all depends on what you use and how many fixes you get a day. If you do a fix an hour from, say, 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, you could possibly get as much as 18 to 24 months of battery life out of some of these units. But if you put it up higher and you want more points, which is where you want to head to, you want to have as many points as possible, the battery life just goes a lot quicker. So those are some of the things that we've found. The statistical analysis, obviously all the data, all the height above ground level, etc., is going to be interpreted and then loaded onto ArcGIS to develop maps for us, and then presented as minimum convex polygons. Just to give you an idea, this one down here is Shuttle. This is a bird that was rehabilitated and then released at Camberg, which is over there, and has been flying all over the Eastern Cape and all over, right up towards Itala. And there's the, let's say, wind farm. What I found very interesting, which I never knew would have happened, is that there's not many fixes in Lesotho, actually, of these birds. I mean, they tend to stick around the edge of the berg. All right, so yeah, that's the wind farm. Here's another one. This one is Traveller. Traveller, we call Traveller because we left him at Camberg on day 1, and at day 5 he was outside East London somewhere, and he was staying down there for quite some time, and then he travelled, and 2 days later he travelled all the way up to near Newcastle. So, and if you look at him, this is a juvenile bird, you look at him and the movement across Lesotho there and across the actual high mountains, it's quite different to the other one. This one is Benny. Benny was an adult bird that was released a long time ago in the same area, and look at the fixes over there. So if we then get to those minimum convex polygons, the blue one over there is for Benny. This one over here is Traveller, and then that. So this directly, I suppose, relates to the age of these birds. And I've got a theory as well, or not a theory, but I've got a thinking that it depends on where they actually found. Because if they're found in the Eastern Cape here, and we release them around the Drakensberg, they tend to want to come back down there. This is why it is important, I think, to be able, if you want to look at the Northern Drakensberg, to catch them all there. This is why we're capturing there specifically, is to get them there caught and then release them there to try to see if you can get any more data from that kind of part of the world. That's just the release site of most of them. We have used Camberg as a release site for all of the birds in this study. Obviously that would change once we get some birds caught up in the northern Drakensberg. Some of the challenges, apart from catching birds, which is actually not an easy process, the high cost of those units. I mean, some of those units are 30,000 Rand a piece. I mean, all of you who have worked with these tracking devices would know it's not a cheap exercise to put these things on. And then sometimes what happens is you put them on and they fly off, and 2 days later they don't work anymore. And then, of course, it's not a thing you can get back at any time. It's gone forever. The high download cost of the satellite units is it's about 1,000 Rand a month to run the download costs and the data working costs in France. Cell reception near the Lesotho border and inside of Lesotho is a problem for the units that work with the cellular network. So what you would need to do is you'd need to have international Roma obviously activated on those satellite units for it to work in Lesotho. And sometimes you wouldn't, there's not a lot of infrastructure on that side. Logistically, Cape vulture is one of those species that demands a lot of respect from researchers, from bird of prey researchers, and a lot of people want to be, involved with all of the captures and that kind of thing. And the assembly of teams, getting everybody to agree to a time to go and capture, and getting all the equipment and stuff, and just the logistical stuff around it could sometimes be quite a challenge. The season as well plays a huge part. Obviously, we would not want to capture when these birds have chicks or eggs or nest building or anything like that. So from June all the way through to sort of October or even November, we're quite worried about catching. So we will basically catch in December, which is the silly season for somebody like me who has to run a park as well. It's not an easy time. January then, and then March. If it doesn't work in January, you're going to February and March, and then it's done again, unfortunately. So very short space of time. Then the level of competency of a lot of stuff. There's problems in finding people that are true specialists in these fields, because a lot of the stuff, especially around the satellite tracking devices, is new information. I mean, every day we've got where I work at the moment at Wien, and we've got another project regarding rhino that we want to also use satellite tracking units, and the schools are thought around these things, and where do you put the unit, and there's a myriad of things around it. The statistical analysis will for me personally be a problem. Retrieving carcasses of dead birds. Okay, when these birds die, obviously they still send out information. That's nice. You get a fix, you know where they are, but it's not always possible to actually reach them. It's not always possible to reach them. So recovering of units, and then when that unit is gone, it's gone. Reliable food sources to use, in the traps for capture. It's another thing. Where do you get the carcasses from? You've got to make sure that those things are reliable. And that's basically it from my side. Thank you very much.